Hello, I'm Julie Swenson, Managing Director of Forward Theater Company in Madison, Wisconsin.
And I'm Mike Fisher, Milwaukee-based theater writer and dramaturg.
I'm Jen Uphoff-Gray, founder and artistic director of Forward Theater Company. And this is Theater Forward, a twice-monthly conversation about theater from a local, regional, and national perspective. From Madison to Manhattan, we're excited to share insight into our own company while exploring issues surrounding theater in the Midwest and around the country. Welcome to episode 69 of Theater Forward. Hello.
Hello.
Great to be here.
This episode is going to be coming out close to Thanksgiving. And so we're using that as an excuse to talk about all the things making us feel thankful these days. And Julie, I know you've got something you want to kick us off with.
Well, I'm going to kick us off with something that I know is on all of our lists. And that is we are doing live theater now with real people watching, communing with our craft, and to see audiences coming back. I mean, they have to show their vaccination card and they're in masks, but they are coming back and have missed it the same way we've missed it and this live theater. So I am very grateful to see the Overture Center full.
Yeah. That leads me to one of the top ones on my list. I'm thankful for science. I'm thankful for the scientists that rolled out a safe and effective vaccine so much faster than any of us could have imagined 20 months ago when we started this journey. And I'm grateful to live in a community that values science so that we can have really high vaccination rates in the community and in our audience, to live in an area where the governing bodies take science seriously and are creating conditions where we can safely come back, and where our audience is showing up. We had a show last night and we were pretty packed. And yes, Julie, it is amazing. And I think that feeling of thankfulness is not going away anytime soon.
Hey, not to pile on but I'm going to pile on. Speaking of last night's show, I guess one of the things I'm thankful for are three productions, one of which is Forward's own The Amateurs, which will have closed by the time this drops. But I picked these three of because they represent, in the way The Amateurs does so well, not only a return to theater, but the idea of life after death, and the sort of a recognition of all we have lost, and yet messages of such huge hope. I mean, I have a good friend who came out of The Amateurs who was sobbing told me for 15 minutes, not just because of the play has some hard things to deal with, because it gave her a true and honest and hopeful reflection of where we're going. A second production, which will still be playing when this podcast drops, it runs through December 5th, that does the same thing, is the magnificent Milwaukee Rep production of Steel Magnolias. Go see it, people. And I've talked about Steel Magnolias a few times on this podcast. If you think you know this show because you've seen the movie, you don't. And so if you want to see just an absolute kick-ass ensemble of actors that are killing it, and again, talking about how you can have hope even in the toughest times, that's it. And then finally, and I'm looking right at you, Scott Hayden, our producer of this show, I want to give a special shout out to Heather Christian, who is somebody I talked about many times when we were doing Mike's Picks. She had a show that I know Scott loved because we talked about it, along with his beloved and wonderful wife, Claire, Animal Wisdom, which was a co-production of Woolly Mammoth and the American Conservatory Theater. It played earlier this year, and it is so about what it means to live with all of our ghosts and absorb them, learn from them, and move forward. And Heather also has, and you can still listen to this one on the Ethernets of the world, is Prime, a practical breviary, which was put out by Playwrights Horizons. If you go to their website, it won all kinds of awards last year. It is a gorgeous 30-minute sounding of that same theme.
Thank you for that, Mike. That's a lovely little trio there. Thinking about this upcoming podcast, when I was planning for this conversation and really trying to say, what comes to my mind of the things that I'm thankful for right now. One of the other things I thought about is how grateful I have been for my colleagues who work in producing theater, and want to kind of shout out two, pools of colleagues in particular. One is just my colleagues running theaters across Wisconsin. We've been convening monthly meetings of the leadership of Wisconsin's professional theater companies since the pandemic began, Zoom meetings and a chance to talk through the challenges we're facing, what we're seeing with our digital audiences, what we've been seeing with live audiences, what our safety protocols have been, how we're finding rapid tests, all of those conversations. It has been such a gift to have colleagues to share this journey with, and everybody has been so generous and supportive. And I think that we all felt that way about each other before the pandemic, but we didn't actually put it into action by getting together to support each other in this way. And so I'm just feeling really grateful for those connections and that sense of community and support that we've been developing. And then also, and I want to especially shout out TCG Theater Communications Group. They've been convening over the last number of months regular conversations for theater leadership at different budget levels around the country so that we could have Zoom meetings with I could meet with other artistic directors of companies with an annual operating budget between, $1 and $3 million. And, Julie could meet with managing directors from similar sized companies. And those conversations too have been just so helpful, to talk to a colleague in Arkansas or to talk to a colleague in New York or in San Francisco and see where we're dealing with similar struggles and where our experiences can help each other. I'm so grateful for these new pathways of communication. And I'm really optimistic that those are going to continue long after the troubles of COVID are, knocking wood right now, behind us.
Yeah, I can. Go ahead, Julie.
I was just going to, in addition to, because I did have many of the same things on my list. So I'll go smaller, and that is I am grateful for an enthusiastic, hardworking, loving bunch of people that I work with, and I say our staff, our board, our advisory company. This has been a hard time, and I've never felt that people lost their enthusiasm or shut down or never wanted. They only wanted to do the right thing and do it well. And it has been a pleasure to see everyone back in the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I love and am so grateful for the collegiality and friendship.
You're here.
I'm also piggybacking yet again. You guys are making it so easy for me, but I'll pick a particular company in Wisconsin that I think has exemplified, many have, but one that is near and dear to me is First Stage in Milwaukee, and particularly its young company, three of whose leaders, really its backbone, are three people who are well known to forward audiences. That's Matt Daniels, currently on stage in The Amateurs, Marcy Kearns, and Elise Edelman. And they once again this year, as they seem to do every year, just absolutely, ran the table at the annual Utah Shakespeare Young People's Shakespeare competition, taking home way more awards. There were something like 3,000 plus entries, and they took home a huge percentage of the awards that were issued. Two plugs for upcoming young company shows. This is really a chance, folks, to see one of the elite young people's theater companies and its cadre of core elite members anywhere in the United States. The Laramie Project, which Elise will be directing, opens on December 3rd in Milwaukee with a cast, a really, really strong cast. And then Macbeth, yes, I said it, is opening on March 25th.
You're not in a theater. It's okay.
You're in your house. It's okay.
We'll be opening on March 25th and running through April 3rd, directed by Marcy. So, and First Stage is another company which, like Forward, managed to keep programming going under very, very difficult circumstances, even more challenging in some ways than ours, because most of their people are people who cannot be vaccinated, just given their age. Or couldn't be for a long time. And they kept it coming throughout the pandemic and are opening tonight with a return to the theater, a production of Charlie Brown, tonight being Friday, the 19th of November.
I love it. I love it. Another thing, sort of category that of things I've been really thinking about in recent weeks that has really made this year more exciting and engaging for me. And this may, I don't know, may get your hackles up a little bit, Mike, but I've been so grateful for what I affectionately dub theater Twitter during this time. And it's partly because I know how to curate a feed. So that I'm following voices that I really want to hear. But I have started to follow a number of really dynamic, passionate, smart people who are thinking about not just what is happening in our theater community right now across the country, across the world, but also where we want it to go. And by following these folks on Twitter, I am learning so much about different perspectives, about ideas that are being tried out at peer companies around the country. It's been so exhilarating to feel like I have in my pocket some of the great contemporary minds in our field, and I can tap into what they're thinking and feeling about what's going on. I'll throw out a couple of names of folks that I have really enjoyed following, and it is by no means a comprehensive list, but in no particular order, there's Lauren Halverson, who we've mentioned before, who creates the Nothing for the Group newsletter. Obviously, Jeremy O. Harris has been an inspirational voice. Someone like Audra McDonald, I really enjoy following for her perspective on what's happening in the Broadway world. Caridad Svich, who's a really exciting playwright who's focusing a lot on the future of digital theater and where our field might go in that direction. Soraya McDonald, who's a really engaging cultural critic who looks a lot at the theater. Anne Morgan, continuing my tradition of following dramaturgs who tend to have really great perspectives. And of course, some of the more institutional voices, the Peter Marxes and Terry Teachouts, the New York Times Theater List, TCG, American Theater Magazine, all et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But particularly some of those individual voices I have found have brought new ideas to my attention, new perspectives, and they've been really influential as I've thought about where we go from here on multiple fronts, be it digital theater, EDI and anti-racist work, programming, and on and on and on and on.
Such a great list. And I love following all of them when I'm reading actual articles rather than sound bites, which is as much as I'll say about Twitter in a session that's dedicated to gratitude. On a slightly more somber note, I want to call out.
Dramaturgs make good.
You
I was
can't
just
say
saying,
any
dramaturgs make good tweeters. There you go.
Sound bites are sound bites. So that's as much as I'll say about that. On a slightly more somber note, I do want to shout out, if that's the right word, I want to give deep gratitude to two powerful actors that we lost this year. Martha Henry, who is a mainstay at the Stratford Festival for over half century. Some of her things you can see online at the Stratford website. And then Helen McCrory, probably known to most of you as Narcissa Malfoy, but she was also just a huge presence on the stage in Britain for a long time. And Ben Brantley said it best when we lost her at 52 years old. Imagine what we would have lost if Judi Dench, Maggie Smith, or Helen Mirren had died in their early 50s. That one probably struck me the hardest of all the many losses that we've had in the last year. And again, as part of our theme here today of moving toward hope, these are all people who do live on. They live on through their work. You can see their work. McCrory's amazing Medea or Deep Blue Sea is available at the National Theater website for a pittance in terms of a rental. They were great voices that gave us a lot for a long time. And they certainly had a major impact on me.
Beautiful. I want to thank, speaking of your comment about living on and being able to see those performances, it feels timely to express my gratitude to the theater licensing houses and playwrights, and to the unions who have throughout the pandemic thus far made it possible for theaters like Forward to decide, even as we came back to live performance, to continue filming these productions and making them available digitally for audiences that either cannot or are not yet comfortable coming back to the theater. It's a big question whether those entities are going to continue to allow that as more and more people do come back to live. And I'm really, really, really hoping that Actors Equity and SAG can come together to extend the ability of companies like ours to offer streaming. I hope that licensing houses will continue to do it. It's not something that we can control. So many people in our audience keep asking us, will you continue to do this, to offer this digital option after this season? And I keep having to say, I don't know, because it's not really up to us. If we can continue to do it under conditions similar to the ones we have now, then the answer is an enthusiastic yes. I mean, yes, it's more logistics, it's more money, all of that to be able to film it, but compared to the benefit that we get in terms of accessibility, it's huge, and it's a very worthwhile investment. And so this is me sort of simultaneously expressing my gratitude to everyone who's allowed us to do it thus far, and kind of pleading with those same groups to continue to make this possible, to find ways to make it possible going into the future, because I do think it's been a real boon for accessibility, and I hope that it will continue.
Yeah, boy, amen.
Jen, on my list, and exactly that I want to add, I had a huge win last week. We found a company that does closed captioning versus a staff member watching scenes and typing things up. So I want to thank Rev, R-E-V, who took a 2-hour play with multiple people speaking and had a crisp, clear, accurate, closed captioning file for me in 9 hours. And that I was jumping up and down in the office. So we're getting so much better at this digital stuff. They can't take it away. We've got it now. I too hope that we, for accessibility, for the people out of town, for the Sunbirds, for the relatives in other states, I certainly hope we can keep the digital option.
Yeah. And what we've done, I mean, I know it's self-serving, but, really a shout out, Julie and Jen, to both of you and to everybody at Forward for being one of the, fairly few companies that is streaming its entire season this year, after having also offered us an entire virtual season last year, in addition to our live option this year. It's pretty awesome. I guess quickly on one of my favorite topics, which is Shakespeare. One of the things I streamed that I really, really loved recently from Stratford was a production called R&J, an adaptation of You Know What. But it featured, it was set up so that it was designed for simultaneously for visually impaired audience members and for regularly sighted audience members. And so, for example, they read all the stage directions. They described things like sword fights and things like that without going through them. And in general, what it did is it placed everybody in the audience in the same place. You had a blind Father Lawrence around whom the story was built. It was a beautiful sort of tribute to accessibility. And there have been a number of really exciting Shakespeare productions for which I'm grateful this year. That's one of them. I think that the Taming of the Shrew that American Players Theater did with Shauna Cooper is really sort of rethinking that play in exciting ways. The As You Like It at Chicago Shakespeare, which mashes up that and the Beatles, and which will be coming to Milwaukee Rep in the spring. And then finally, a glorious Othello at Court Theater, which makes the play, and I think this is the first time I can honestly say this, about Othello and what Othello is feeling, and not about Iago. It takes a lot of Iago's lines out. It gives us a Black Cassio, which I had never seen before, and which changes the whole dynamic of that relationship. It was a really smart, well thought through production in which the lead, the Othello, was in every single design meeting for that production before it even went into rehearsal, so that his input and the things he thought about could be incorporated in the way the show was built, and it paid dividends.
Gorgeous. Well, I think we may start to wind this thankfulness conversation down, not because we can't keep going, but because, we want to be thankful of everybody's time who's listening.
How lucky we are that we do have so many things to be thankful for.
That's exactly right. That's right. But I will close with what we'll say is last, but certainly not least, probably the most important thing I'm thankful for. And that's the audiences that stuck with us as we were solely digital, the audiences that have come back so enthusiastically and gratefully, being in the lobby, welcoming people and seeing that they are as excited to be back as we are excited to see them. And that's pretty excited. And the audiences who, for any number of completely understandable reasons, still aren't ready to come back, but are sticking with us and still subscribing and still buying digital tickets and, taking their own time, but sticking with us throughout it. Just for all those categories of audience members, we are so grateful. You make it worth, all of the complications and struggles of this past 20 months. We were thankful for you before. We are more thankful for you now. And we look forward, pun intended, to all of the great theater that lies ahead together. And with that statement, I will say that is all for this episode of Theater Forward, a conversation about theater in Wisconsin, the Midwest, and America. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm Jen Uphoff-Bray.
I'm Julie Swenson.
And I'm Mike Fisher, grateful for the amazing group that is making this podcast with me. Jen, that was such a gorgeous speech. Our podcast is produced by Scott Hayden, to whom we owe endless gratitude. This podcast would not happen without all the work that Scott does to make it possible.
Here.
You can follow us or share your thoughts on Facebook and Twitter at Theater Forward. As always, theater spelled with an E-R.
And if you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you might tune in. And please be sure to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
We're so grateful to have you listening, and we will be back soon for another Theater Forward conversation.